What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Raiders of the Lost podcast. Episode 16, we're going to do our second director spotlight on Christopher Nolan. One of the biggest influential filmmakers of the last 20 years. And it's timely because his newest film, Tenet, is coming out in September in America. And we've done a couple podcasts where we talked about Chris Nolan, but they were pretty shitty. And we didn't really talk about like his filmography and analyze his films like we did with Quentin Tarantino. But that's what we're going to do today. So we're going to get into that in just a minute. Also, if we have not been able to see Tenet, so we won't really be talking about Tenet too much.
Yeah,
just a little
we already
briefly.
have in the past.
If you have seen it outside of America, don't spoil it, please. Don't leave any comments about it. We have not seen it, and we can't see it until theaters open up in this country. So try to keep it to yourself. If you've seen it already, we're sure it's amazing. And before we begin, if you like our podcast and our content and want to help support us, the best. Share us with your movie friends. We know you have plenty of them, or just a couple. I mean, we don't have a marketing department, so you guys are just going to have to help us spread the word. It's just me. Leo does all the editing. I do everything else. And leaving 5-star reviews. I know everyone says it on podcasts, but it really helps us get seen by people on podcast audio formats, and apps. So leave a 5-star review, please, especially the ones that are written. And hit the notification bell on YouTube so you know when new videos pop up. And subscribe, leave a comment.
Hell yeah.
All right, let's get into this episode. So Christopher Nolan, just a little brief history on this guy. Was born in London, England in 1970. Began making films at a young age with his father's Super 8 camera. His mother was an American flight attendant, and his father was he's from England, was a advertising executive. So he split time in his childhood between Illinois and England. He made several short films at university and in his personal life.
He was an English major, by the way.
Yeah, English lit major. And he has big breakthrough in 1998 with the film Following, which he shot with only 3,000 pounds. And
which he filmed over weekends for a year with his friends as the cast and crew.
Yeah, which led to him getting funding for Memento because Following had a critical acclaim at some film festivals.
It was played at the Slam Dance Film Festival where he got his biggest recognition for that film.
Yeah. His brother Jonathan Nolan is also a filmmaker, has often helped Christopher Nolan with storylines and scripts. We'll get more into him later. He's also the showrunner of Westworld. And that's just a brief history. The rest is, one of the most successful directors in the history of cinema.
Yeah, he's one of the few modern directors where his name comes before the movie.
And let's get into it.
Yeah.
So what makes a Christopher Nolan movie a Christopher Nolan movie? I think the first and foremost thing that we should talk about is time and nonlinear storytelling. So Nolan constantly manipulates time and story time in the way the audience perceives it. We see that heavily in Memento, The Prestige, Inception.
Even in Batman Begins.
Yeah, and then he does it in a different way in Interstellar.
He uses a lot of flashbacks and flash forwards.
Yeah.
Keeps you on edge as an audience member, and he forces you to pay attention more so than other directors.
And many times the beginning of movies are usually sometimes the end of his movies, and you got to kind of pay attention. But we'll get more into that later.
Yeah.
Another big characteristic of Nolan movies are incredibly unique action sequences and spectacles.
Yeah. His set pieces are massive and bombastic, but they're real. And they're in camera, and they feel tangible. And they don't look like video games like some of these modern blockbusters.
Yeah.
They look like it's really happening, and that's what makes the difference with his action set pieces.
Yeah, and in terms of unique action sequences, I mean, we're talking about Inception. You put a train on a street with cars.
He ran a train through downtown Los Angeles for real.
Hitting cars.
Yeah.
Another characteristic of Nolan are long and complex climaxes, which can sometimes span what feels like half the film.
Yeah.
Especially like Inception, Interstellar. All the Batman movies have lots of different climaxes going on that take up a long period of time.
Yeah, and during the climax, there's generally 2 or 3 storylines that are happening simultaneously, and he cuts between each one.
And then practical effects. So Christopher Nolan is a big believer in capturing as much in camera as you can. He very rarely uses green screens. I think in Tenet he didn't even use a single green screen.
It's amazing.
He'll use CGI, but only to enhance practical shots.
Yeah.
So he doesn't do completely CGI shots like Dark Knight. They blew up that hospital. I mean,
they really flipped that truck.
Yeah, they flipped the airplane upside down. Like they did this for real. So he's really a big believer in practical effects. Realism.
Uses a lot of miniatures, actually.
Yeah.
Surprising.
Ambiguous endings, another trait. A lot of his movies are kind of open to interpretation. Clearly, people still don't know what the fuck happened at the end of Inception. A good characteristic for sure is Hans Zimmer.
Oh, yeah.
Who he has heavily collaborated with.
The best pairing since John Williams and Spielberg.
Probably. He hasn't done all of his movies. The first movie he did for him was Batman Begins.
Yeah.
He did not do The Prestige. But since then, he's done everything except for now Tenet.
Yeah.
Michael Caine is in a lot of his movies.
Michael Caine.
Michael Caine. I won't marry another Batman. And Dead Wives, Dead Girlfriends.
Dead Girl.
And, neo-noir and that kind of vibe, like mystery, espionage.
Espionage and international, like large scope. And shooting on film, especially large format film, like 65 millimeter.
IMAX 65 millimeter filming, projecting film.
Yeah.
And he's been integral in the preservation of film, along with directors like Scorsese and Tarantino, and his belief in going to the cinema and seeing film projected on film, which we don't get the opportunity to do very often anymore. And when we do, we specifically, every time we see a Nolan movie, we go to see it projected on film.
Yeah. And just like Tarantino, he writes his movies.
Yeah, except for there's one movie he hasn't written the script for. All right, let's get into the filmography of Christopher Nolan.
Let's do it.
As we talked about a minute ago. So in 1998, Christopher Nolan made Following, again on a very low budget. As you stated, filmed it during weekends.
Yeah, his friends made up the cast and crew.
And his producer, his wife, worked on it as well.
Yeah. Emma Thomas.
Yeah, we won't go over this for too much because I'm sure a lot of people haven't seen this movie. It's really well made. It's kind of Alfred Hitchcock vibe. It's black and white.
It's voyeuristic,
It's a mystery.
But it has a lot of the synonymous Nolan themes of time changing time, shooting on film, mystery.
It's about a man who follows strangers and gets involved in their lives. And there's an accidental foreshadow of Batman in this movie. People think it means that he knew who was gonna make Batman because he opens the door. The front of the door has a Batman logo. Christopher Nolan was not a well-known person in the film industry at all. This is his first movie. He had no idea or intentions of ever making a Batman movie.
Yeah, it's people reading into it too much.
It's just completely. Yeah. It's just a coincidence, 100%. So this was not like a foreshadow.
Yeah.
At the time, Nolan was making training videos for companies for their employees, for staff. So if you haven't seen Following, check it out. It's a really interesting movie. It's
available on Criterion.
You can definitely see. You can probably find it on YouTube too. You can definitely see the makings of a talented storyteller in it for sure. It's an interesting movie. It's cool. I liked it a lot. We've seen it a couple times.
Yeah.
But,
the lead character's name is Cobb.
Yeah. He's also in Batman Begins. Anyways, so Following, again, we won't spend too much time on it, but it got critical acclaim and led to him getting funding from Memento.
Yeah.
Which was a seriously remarkable, this was his real debut film.
Yeah.
And got nominated for 2 Oscars, Best Screenplay and Best Editing, which it definitely deserved both of those.
Absolutely.
And it's about a man with short-term memory loss named Leonard, who can only remember things for up to 10 minutes, can't form new memories, and he's looking for the killer of his murdered wife. And he goes on his quest with clues that he writes down for himself, either on paper, on Polaroid photos, or tattoos on his body.
And Nolan really puts you into the headspace of Leonard by showing the scenes of the film in reverse. Forwards. So just like Leonard, you are trying to figure out what's happening, when something else happened, what time is now. So you really relate to the way his mind works. Exactly. And it adds to the mystery of the movie itself.
Yeah, so there's 2 separate story threads the whole movie. There's a black and white story arc, which is pretty coherent. And it's not. It's slow paced. It runs forward, and then it alternates with a color story arc, which is running backwards in time.
Yeah.
And it's a real achievement in storytelling and script writing, in my opinion. And like you said, Nolan wants the audience member to be confused. He wants you to feel like Leonard.
You're trying to figure things out just like Leonard is.
Yeah.
You're in the same position as him.
Yeah, you're lost. And we get to see what it's like to be Leonard.
Yeah.
I mean, he misdirects the audience. He shows you information that he'll only show Leonard.
Yeah.
And he'll only show us specific information just like Leonard. We don't know what's going on. We're meeting characters for the first time like Leonard is. Yeah. Even though Leonard has known them for who knows how long. He's met them a dozen times or more.
Yeah.
And Nolan denies us information at specific times like Leonard's denied information.
Yeah. And it can be contradictory evidence, you know what I mean? You can't always trust what Leonard's saying and what he has tattooed on his body.
Yeah.
And he relies on note-taking and tattoos to provide him with information. and that can be cannot always be trusted. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So this movie, a common theme in a lot of Nolan movies is revenge. There's betrayal. We're dealing with memory and also time.
Yeah.
And so this is the first time that Nolan really actually gets to play interestingly with time, going backwards and forwards at the same time. And again, we're completely confused the whole time.
Yeah. The movie opens with a shot of a Polaroid camera, a Polaroid picture, and it starts as a fully developed image on the Polaroid, and then it slowly fades into the white of a photo just being taken. And it's a perfect example of Leonard's mind. So we can understand that just like him, he has a memory, and then after a short period of time, it fades away. So we right off the bat, we have an understanding of who he is and how his mind works.
Yeah, for all you millennials out there, we had these things called Polaroid cameras, which are these big, bulky things. You took a photo, it actually printed out on the spot, and you had to wait like 2 minutes for it to develop in front of your eyes.
And you usually shook it.
And if you shook it, you could make it develop faster, but sometimes...
I think that was a myth, though.
No, it worked, but it would blot the ink, and it wouldn't come out as crisp. So that was shot in reverse.
Yeah.
And so it comes out, so that's why he's shaking it, and it comes out, it was white at the end, which is really cool to see.
Yeah.
And it's just it's a great insight into Leonard, the protagonist's mind,
Yeah.
where you're taking him backward. You're on a backwards journey with him through his foggy memory. And so that's a metaphor of the whole entire movie in his mind.
Yeah, and this has a great cast because it has Guy Pearce in, I think, his big star-making role. He's fantastic. And then it also has Carrie-Anne Moss and Joe Pantoliano as the two supporting characters. And Carrie-Anne Moss actually got Pantoliano on board because they worked together on The Matrix, and she recommended him.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
He's also big on Sopranos, too.
Yeah.
But
and Daredevil.
He's a good actor.
He's a very good
actor.
actor.
Guy Pearce knocks this movie out of the park. He's so charismatic, and that's what I like about this character. You can't help but root for him. And he's really interesting. He looks like he's on a good journey.
Yeah.
But really deep down, when you find out what's really going on,
Yeah.
obviously there's gonna be spoiler alerts to people. So if you've never seen the movie, you might want to.
It's 20 years old, so
yeah.
we think you've seen it.
You end up feeling nothing but pity for the guy.
Yeah.
And he's on this journey trying to find the killer. And by the end of the movie, he decides to turn his only friend into his new villain.
Yeah.
And he doesn't want the mystery to be solved. He wants to keep either solving the mystery over and over again, or it's just that his vengeance will never be quenched, and he'll never be satisfied.
He freezes himself into the story of looking for the killer of his wife, even though he already accomplished it.
And he just recreates the puzzle over and over again. So
he gives himself a new suspect every time.
Yeah, so when we mean the beginning of the movie is really the end of the movie, it's the end of the movie where you find out that he's already killed John G. He's found the guy, and now he's turning his best friend, his only friend, Joe Pantoliano, into his new victim, his new villain.
I think but what I think about the movie is there never was a killer of his wife, because I think that Leonard is actually Sammy. That separate storyline of the man who also has the same condition as Leonard, and Sammy accidentally kills his wife by giving her too much insulin, and I think that is Leonard's story. That's his past, but he's changed it to forget about it. So he's separated it from his life and given it a new name, and then so he's separated himself from accidentally killing his own wife, and he's created this new narrative that someone murdered his wife. And so I think him looking for a new murderer every time is him just creating this new false narrative of what happened to his wife.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah.
It's a really visually striking movie too, especially like this main character wakes up and he can't remember anything. He's just covered in these tattoos, these weird clues, and it's so cool to see this character trying to figure everything out, because I love mystery movies. I love mystery stories.
Yeah.
And anything involving like a detective work or something like that, I just find fascinating.
Yeah.
And it's just awesome because, again, Nolan does a great job putting you in Lenny's shoes, letting you know how he thinks, and just in being specific with what information you learn and he learns at the same time.
Yeah, and the constant narration works really well, and Guy Pearce even improvised most of his narration in the movie.
And all the conversations on the phone work and everything too. And I mean, half the movie, the guy's in a hotel room talking on the phone, but it works.
Yeah.
And it works really well.
Because you're always invested in trying to figure out what is happening. It really shows you what kind of a director he is, what kind of ideas and themes he's interested in telling. And you can see, just like Wes Anderson's first movie, the first the first instincts that he has as a filmmaker.
I agree. All right, let's move on to Insomnia, which I think is a very underrated movie, because Nolan's made so many fantastic films. It's kind of buried in the abyss of his early filmography, and it's also the only movie that Chris Nolan didn't write the script for. And also, when I watch this movie and I look back at his career, to me, this movie seems kind of like a test that the studio gave him to see, you made this great film. Memento is fantastic. And obviously we need new people for big production projects. And this is sort of like your test. Like, play ball with us. Let's see how you do on this movie, an actual large budget by Warner Brothers.
Yeah, I think I had $40 million.
And let's see how you do, because we're trying to reboot Batman soon. Maybe you're the guy, maybe you're not. Play ball, make a great movie, and we'll see what happens from there. And this leads to Chris Nolan basically having control over whatever he wants to do. Yeah. Because he did a great job with this movie, and it was basically a stepping stone, in my opinion, for Nolan's career.
It absolutely was. And Insomnia is an American remake of a Swedish film that starred Stellan Skarsgård. And the success of this movie, because it was a critical and financial success, it made over $100 million box office, which especially was a big deal in the early 2000s, especially for a dark rated R crime drama
by a director no one really knew.
Yeah, no one really knew of. And his success with Insomnia is what allowed him to pitch his take on Batman to get Batman Begins with Warner Brothers.
So he has Hilary Swank, Al Pacino, and Robin Williams all in one movie, the three lead roles. And that's quite the pedigree to have in a movie, specifically for a young director on his second film, his second big film, his major studio production. I think it's a smart casting, because not only are you putting the reins of your movie on incredibly talented shoulders, but you're hitting a lot of different audiences with this film. Yeah. Robin Williams has a very specific audience. Hilary Swank has a specific audience. Al Pacino has a specific audience. I'm sure all these people were now interested in this movie. I think it was an effective way to get people to the movie, to get to the theaters to see it.
Oh, yeah. He understands that casting is the first part of the battle. If you cast your movie well with professional actors who know what they're doing, half of your job's been done. All you got to do is light it now. But I think this is one of Al Pacino's most underrated performances. He's absolutely incredible in this movie, and he really makes you feel like this guy hasn't slept in days. You can just feel how exhausted he is. You can feel how much guilty he's feeling. You can just feel like how he just wants to give up and get out of there. And he sells it so well. And it's definitely, in my opinion, one of his better performances.
So Insomnia is about a murder investigation that takes place in a town in Alaska. Al Pacino plays a detective from, I think, New York City. And he goes to Alaska to help Hilary Swank, who's in the sheriff's department of the town, investigate this murder. And
because it's a small-time police department there.
Yeah, so they need help from an outside source, from a homicide department. And Robin Williams is the killer, but also what happens is
Al Pacino accidentally kills his partner during a chase trying to find Robin Williams. And so he has to keep that under wraps and try to dispose of any kind of evidence while also trying to track down Robin Williams' character and frame him for the murder.
Meanwhile, Pacino's character is also being investigated by internal affairs from his job in New York City.
Yeah. And his partner was going to testify against him, which would have given him motive for killing him.
Yeah, so it's just this great mystery where the killer, the antagonist, and the protagonist, Al Pacino, the cop, kind of become not so much allies, but they're working together in a way.
Exactly.
They're also trying to stop each other.
Yeah.
And Nolan really makes you feel like you're far away from the rest of society in this film, specifically because you're in Alaska.
Yeah.
And in terms of Insomnia, most people know that Alaska, there's periods of times where there's no sunsets, there's no darkness.
Yeah.
So you're entrenched with light for like half the year.
Yeah.
Or 3
it's
months.
Like 22 hours out of the day, it's light out.
And he opens the movie up with these fantastic airplane aerial shots of just the Alaskan tundra.
Yeah.
And you're still in America, but you look like you're on a different planet. And it really, you really feel the isolation of these characters, especially Al Pacino, who's not used to this kind of environment because he's from a big city.
Yeah.
And you're on this horrible journey and dread of him not being able to sleep. He's trying to solve this murder. He's been involved in this murder. And it's a really dreadful experience for the character.
He's being haunted, and he can't even rest for one moment. And it's a great cat and mouse between him and Robin Williams because, like you said, they have to kind of work together in a way. But also Pacino still wants to catch him. but he needs to find a way to prove that he is the killer. And this film showcases, I think, Chris Nolan's first major set piece, which is that the chase between Al Pacino and Robin Williams, where they run across the logs over the water. I think that's the first major action set piece in a Nolan movie, and it shows you how much control he has over directing action, because that film is that sequence is perfectly filmed. You can feel the tension when Pacino falls under the water and he's trapped by the logs and he's trying to find a way out. So you can see the beginnings of the Nolan action set pieces with that sequence.
Yeah, and again, neo-noir. Nolan loves that kind of vibe in mystery in his movies. This movie kind of feels like a mystery, like Chinatown.
Yeah.
About a character who's in too deep something that he doesn't fully understand. And Al Pacino is just constantly in this back and forth struggle of he can't sleep. He's trying to catch Robin Williams. He's involved in a murder. He's trying to get internal affairs off his back. He's involved in corruption back home.
Yeah.
So he's just a life in a character full of turmoil, and really, he just wants to go to sleep.
Yeah, that's all he wants.
All he wants to do is go to sleep. And obviously, spoiler alert, by the end of the movie, he finally gets to go to sleep. And the only
eternal sleep.
The only way he achieves sleep is through death.
Yeah.
But he saves the day, and he saves the girl, and he catches Robin Williams and everything. Death becomes his only escape from his personal and professional turmoil and struggles.
Yeah. All in all, it's a fantastic crime film. Great performances.
Robin Williams as a villain is awesome to see.
See him in a different kind of role, and he absolutely crushes it.
It's similar to that movie he did, the photo booth
the
movie.
photo. Yeah,
is that called photo booth?
24-hour photo.
Yeah, 24-hour photo.
Yeah.
It's kind of a similar character.
Yeah.
But
this one's much better made, obviously.
Yeah, much better made movie.
Yeah. And you can see Nolan getting his confidence with a bigger budget, bigger set pieces, more money behind it, great actors, and you can see the beginnings of what he becomes.
Let's move on to the movie that really did it all, Batman Begins, which came out in 2005. And Chris Nolan actually is the first Batman director to actually tell Batman's origin story on film. And he also helped shape the genre of superhero films in general with this movie and TV shows. I mean, Spider-Man, yes, was instrumental as well, but like Nolan brought this sense of realism and putting these heroes in the real world, what it would really be like, in this like gritty, dark take on it, which obviously, yes, influenced Marvel, not the darkness, but the realism.
Yeah.
And then DC has taken the realism and darkness with pretty much everything they've done.
Yeah.
And they've taken that Nolan approach.
And this movie solidified Nolan as a new voice in the action genre. And it was such a stark contrast because the last Batman movie that came out was Batman and Robin. And so his film was a polar opposite to that. And everything you hated about that movie, he turned on its head and made you love about this movie. This movie became a definitive version of Batman for so many people because it was kind of ruined by Shoemaker. Keaton did a great job, and Tim Burton, but Nolan really brought Batman into a believable sphere where you felt like it was a real character with authentic actions and personality traits within a real world that you could believe was true.
What I love about this film is the way he made it is it's just an origin story.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole movie, again, it's about how Bruce Wayne becomes Batman and how, as a damaged youth and a damaged kid, how he becomes Batman.
Yeah.
And it's
emotionally and physically.
Yeah, and when I watched Joker and I was doing notes for this movie, I realized this movie is basically Joker.
Yeah.
Joker, the one with Joaquin Phoenix, is basically the opposite of this movie.
Yeah.
And what I love about it is the opening of the movie has no titles.
Yeah.
Because Batman has not become Batman yet. The opening is just that really eerie, the Hans Zimmer score, and then the bats and the orange in this.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the movie, Bruce Wayne finally becomes Batman, and when the movie cuts to black, it says Batman Begins.
Yeah.
So it's kind of an open-ended, just one simple story.
Yeah.
Which, yes, they wanted, sequels were up in the air. They weren't sure if they were going to do sequels.
But obviously, yeah, they put that Joker card at the end of it. But like they weren't planning like, oh, this is going to be a huge hit. We're definitely going to make another one. They didn't know what would happen with it.
Yeah, so I just love the huge confidence of Chris Nolan to be like, I'm not putting the title at the beginning of this movie.
Yeah.
It doesn't deserve to be at the beginning of the movie. Putting the title at the end of the movie.
And also, you don't see Batman as Batman until, what, an hour and a half into it?
Something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, even like when he's got the tumbler and he's saving Rachel, that's
Yeah.
the first time he's suited up
Yeah.
and he's doing some action in the city,
Yeah.
like big time. But then he doesn't really fully become that hero until he defeats Ra's al Ghul.
Yeah.
And he's fighting Ra's al Ghul.
And it was just so great to watch how not only does he become the new version of Bruce Wayne, but how he becomes Batman. Whereas, how does he get his suit? Where does that come from? How does Batman build his suit? Where does Batman get his Batmobile? How does he get his cave? Like, everything is explained in this amazing, unique fashion where you can see not just the origin of Batman, but like how physically he creates this character in the real world, and you believe it 100%.
Especially like how he would need help, especially like obviously
who would help him? What kind of people can help him? Yeah.
But then Morgan Freeman as Lucius Fox is awesome, and it's like, oh, this is actually believable. I can believe like there's this really smart guy that works at Wayne Enterprises.
Yeah, it's the R&D department. So and obviously they have all this technology and this equipment and gear. So it makes sense that that's how he would build his suit and build all his gadgets.
Yeah, and when I love how Nolan addresses like, what if someone found out about this stuff later on in Dark Knight?
Yeah.
And so, I love how you really learn realistically how someone could become Batman.
Yeah, and my favorite part about the movie, and it obviously there are storylines in the comic books, whereas Batman is not just a superhero, he's a ninja. He's trained by a force of ninjas in the art of martial arts and deception, and it's just fascinating to watch a superhero movie where from the first act of the movie, he's training with ninjas in Asia. It's incredible. Like, that was the last thing you could have expected in a movie like this. And it makes sense to how Batman is physically and how he fights and how he's able to avoid detection. And it's a perfect character trait and backstory to the character.
Yeah, and something cool about the fighting in this movie is Nolan introduced a new form of martial arts, which you really hadn't seen on camera. Usually action movies, just punches and kicks and stuff like that. But he introduced this Spanish fighting method called a Kaisi fighting method, where the person in the fight is using basically every part of their body to defend against themselves and use as weapons. So that's why like there's this great brawl of Batman fighting all the people with
at the drug deal.
And he's just using every part of his body, going in circles.
Yeah.
And then when he's
fighting Ra's al Ghul's guards.
Yeah, when he's fighting Ra's al Ghul's guards. So it's cool to see like a new style of fighting that you haven't really seen before, that exists in the world but you haven't seen before.
Yeah.
Used by a superhero.
Yeah. And Bale's physicality in this movie was incredible, and it's this great story because before he shot this, he filmed The Machinist, where he dropped down to I think 110 pounds, and he was a skeleton in that movie.
And before Machinist, American Psycho.
Yeah. So he did American Psycho, The Machinist. And so he actually auditioned with that machinist weight, and so he was incredibly skinny and gaunt. And Nolan had to ask him, "Can you get up to weight for this movie? We need you to get over 200 pounds." And Bale's like, "Yeah, I can do it." And then he did end up getting well above what they wanted, and he actually showed up to set for Batman Begins overweight. Because what he did was he got jacked, but he was also eating as much food as he could. So he actually put on a lot of fat too. So the crew was calling him Fat Man. So he had to drop 20 pounds of fat before they filmed his shirtless scenes. So he put on too much weight for it.
So then he had to cut.
Yeah, then he had to cut.
Like in a month to film.
And he said, "I can do it, don't worry."
But this movie has so many great actors and so many great characters. Like you're introduced to Cillian Murphy as Scarecrow, which is one of the best parts of the film.
Yeah.
And Cillian almost got Bruce Wayne Batman. He read for it, and he even dressed in wardrobe and did test shoots with it. But I love that Chris decided to put him in the film just as another character.
Yeah.
And he plays a really good villain.
And there's this funny thing where Nolan says his eyes are so blue that he kept he just kept telling Cillian Murphy to take his glasses off to show off his blue eyes.
He's a great casting for the movie.
Yeah.
And then Liam Neeson as Ra's al Ghul, which kind of just ignited Liam's action career, like out of nowhere.
After Phantom Menace.
Yeah. So Liam, like now, after Phantom Menace, but then this comes out, and he's just an ultimate badass.
Yeah.
He does how many action movies since then?
I think he's one of the best superhero villains ever. His version of Ra's al Ghul is unbelievable because he's a mentor. He's wise. You trust him. You really want to... You believe in him as a leader, and then he turns on us, and we see the true side of him. And he has a fascinating performance, and Liam Neeson is great as Ra's al Ghul.
Yeah, and yes, this is a superhero movie based off comic books, but it's a very articulate script.
Yeah.
It's very symbolic. It's emotional. You're on this great journey with type of character that Nolan likes to use is characters with split versions of themselves or split characters, where you're seeing this genius playboy facade of Bruce Wayne split with this nighttime vigilante Batman.
Yeah.
And also you're dealing with the turmoil of this young kid and the tragedy he went through.
Yeah.
And you're kind of just taking these three versions of Bruce Wayne,
Yeah.
the split character, and putting them all together. Even a version of Bruce Wayne where he's like in college, he says he doesn't want to go back to Princeton.
Yeah.
And a young, angry, rebellious version of himself where he almost commits murder.
Yeah. Yeah, Christian Bale, essentially, he plays three roles in this. He plays the real Bruce Wayne, the public Bruce Wayne, and Batman.
And even Bruce Wayne in training.
Yeah, Bruce Wayne in training.
So he has so many different selves.
Yeah,
and,
so many
and
facets to the character.
Nolan's obsessed with main characters that have split selves, which we'll get into more.
Mm-hmm.
The realism that Nolan brings to Batman stems from the experiences of all these different types of Bruce Wayne and all his character flaws.
Yeah. One of my favorite parts about the movie was the Batmobile, the Tumbler. Because the past Batmans have been, the Batmobile has been like sleek and cool and just like
rocket launchers,
and
outside, I don't know.
It looks like they're designed to sell toys, and then you see this, and the Tumbler looks like it belongs on a war field in a war zone, like it can just bulldoze through buildings. You know what I mean? So the practicality begins there, where obviously if the Batmobile was real, it would have to be insanely strong, physical, how it's able to just jump from rooftop to rooftop. Its ability to withstand any kind of like pounding it takes. It was just a great take on the Batmobile, and
to blend in.
Yeah, and to blend in, and no one expected that kind of a Batmobile. So I think that was one of the biggest takeaways about how he changed Batman with this.
Yeah, this movie is super fun, and again, back to characters. Gary Oldman as Jim Gordon is fantastic.
Yeah.
Great
choice.
Mustache, and just like so many great lines and moments. With
He never
Gary
read the
Oldman
script.
and Batman. He never read it.
He didn't. He got offered the part and he said yes, and then he read the script on the plane ride to the shooting.
I don't blame him. So he's awesome as Jim Gordon.
Yeah.
And this movie's a lot of fun. It's like, yes, there are a lot of intense moments, great action scenes, but there's a lot of fun beats, especially with Bruce Wayne and Lucius Fox.
Yeah.
Gary Oldman's pretty funny in
It's
it
a
too.
lot of funny, yeah.
There's a lot of good lines and stuff. And you're beginning to see, again, what Bruce Wayne and what Batman could really be like in the real world.
Yeah.
And Michael Caine is Alfred.
So, yeah, Nolan brought this new take and this new vision to what a superhero movie could be, and what a Batman movie could be. And I think audiences, this movie didn't make that much money. I think it made under $400 million. But as we'll see when Dark Knight came out, we'll talk about it later, clearly audiences loved Batman Begins and were hungry for the next chapter in this new take. Oh, also, I want to talk about, in terms of practicality, Nolan began using miniatures with this film. So a lot of the tumbler scenes, a lot of the jumping on rooftops, a lot of that climactic train sequence, especially when the bomb explodes, those are all miniatures. Because he obviously, like we said, he likes to avoid digital special effects as often as he can. And he found that it was easier and more believable to build these miniatures for the action scenes rather than just digitally making them.
Yeah, there's some great set photos and set videos of the tumbler. It's like, I want to say like the size of this table. It's really cool.
It's small.
It's huge. I mean, big for like a little toy car.
Yeah.
But it's really awesome, and I think it's incredibly effective.
Yeah.
And again, it's like Star Wars, kind of like, let's build a real ship and film it, no matter who cares if it's small.
Yeah.
Or it's like the castle at Hogwarts, let's really build it.
It's so believable. It's tangible. It's really there. And it has that great ending at the climactic scene where the train's about to crash, and Batman breaks open two windows, and he says that iconic line, I'm not gonna kill you, but I don't have to save you. And then he just flies out, and it was just great. It was one of my favorite lines in a Batman movie.
So many good lines. Where were the other drugs going?
Swear to me.
Swear to me. Well, that's how. That's one of the reasons why Christian Bale got the role of Batman, because with all the testing, he has obviously so many great actors coming in, Cillian Murphy, but Christian Bale was the only actor who changed his voice for Batman, because I think Christian Bale had this great take on the character where he understood when he's Batman, he's not Bruce Wayne anymore. He's not a man anymore.
Yeah, he's not human.
He's different. He's a symbol.
He's a beast.
Yeah, so he has to rip himself of as much humanity as he can on the surface to be Batman.
Yeah, and he actually tore out his vocal cords several times, and filming had to be delayed a few times for his vocal cords to heal, because he was just shredding them like a metal singer.
Yeah. And one of my favorite sequences in the movie is, again, we're learning how Batman comes to be, and him and Alfred are just like figuring out what to do, like the foundations, the bats, building the cowl with the separate parts.
Yeah, he smashes it.
At least we'll have spares. Like, it's just so fun and cool to see. And then when he finally, the first time, opens the chest for his suit when he's going to save Rachel.
Yeah.
And it's like that music. It's like the slow-mo and
With
everything.
the belt.
He's like, tell him that joke,
And this is the first time, and this is why Michael Caine accepted the role, is because when Nolan offered him the role, he's like, want me to play the butler? I don't want to serve anyone tea. And then the reason why he took the role is because Alfred became a fully fleshed out character and a father figure to Bruce Wayne, who had an actual impact on the story, emotionally and plot-wise. So it was a great new take on Alfred as well.
And not gonna lie, I think Christian Bale might do the best American accent of any English actor. He does. He seems like he's American.
He even during the press for this movie, he actually did all of his interviews with an American accent because he didn't want to confuse American audiences.
Because he was still relatively unknown, pretty much. Yeah. I mean, people had seen American Psycho on the Machines.
Not that many people, though.
But, like, he wasn't a global star like he is now. Moving on to The Prestige, which somehow Christopher Nolan had time between Batman Begins and The Dark Knight to make another movie. And he adapted this film from Christopher Priest's novel of the same title. It's about feuding and dueling magicians in the 19th century in London, England. And it's a really great movie. Again, kind of an underrated film of Nolan's because he has so many great films. And I really enjoy this movie a lot. It's a lot of fun. Great acting, great characters, amazing directing. And again, a lot of similar traits of Nolan movies and his trademarks of nonlinear storytelling, multiple perspectives, long climaxes, mystery, neo-noir.
Yeah.
And I love it. It's a great movie.
This is a great take on this period of history because in the 19th century, magicians were the celebrities of the day. They were the ultimate performers. People went to magic shows like they went to the movies. So it was great to see a movie really capture the essence of what that culture was like. And it's great to see two rival magicians who are both at the top of their game and the drama that plays out between the both of them.
And what I love about this movie is, as Nolan, as the writer and director of this movie about magicians, he himself acts as a magician himself towards the audience members viewing his movie. Just like a magician, Nolan uses manipulation of information. He shows and tells you and misdirects the audience on specific things. So he's kind of a magician himself in this film, in a lot of his films.
And he even, ironically, at the beginning of the film, it opens with Michael Caine telling you the 3-act structure of a magic trick. Nolan tells you exactly what he's gonna do to the audience, and throughout the film he does that exact thing.
Exactly,
it's amazing.
So Michael Caine's character Cutter, he explains the 3 parts of every magic trick. The pledge, the magician shows you something ordinary. The turn, the magician takes the ordinary something and makes something extraordinary out of it, or makes it do something extraordinary. And the prestige, the magician brings it back. So basically, Nolan, like you said, is setting you up and telling you, I'm going to show you some stuff. I'm going to misdirect you. I'm going to fool you. And then I'm going to show you what the whole thing was about. And I'm going to bring it all back around.
It's like Michael Jordan calling a 3-pointer.
And again, a very complex plot, nonlinear storylines. You're dealing with 2 characters who, at the beginning of the movie or in different parts of the movie, they seem to be friends and working together. And then the plot basically follows a combination of them reading each other's diaries, which is funny because they both end up knowing that they're reading each other's diaries. And then those diaries, similar, which is kind of like how the book's broken up. The book's broken up into both their diaries. It's 2 parts. And then the other storylines are the feuds between them and what's going on, and you're actually seeing in different parts of the perspectives that the characters are experiencing while reading the diaries.
And another thing I love about this movie is how he shows you the creation of tricks, and he kind of unveils the curtain to a lot of the tricks, like the disappearing bird trick, where the bird is in a cage and the magician flattens the cage and the bird disappears, and the audience is like, oh, where'd the bird go? And then he pulls the bird out of a hat or something, so the bird was okay all along. But then in the back room after the show is over, the magician's assistant opens up the table to find the first cage with the smashed, dead, bloody bird inside of it, so we can see how magicians use trickery and illusion to fool the audience.
And it's a metaphor for how Rupert Angier does his trick, which we'll get to in a little bit. Again, spoiler alerts for this.
It's a foreshadow.
We're talking about the end of this movie.
And another great aspect to this movie is that somehow Chris Nolan got David Bowie And he
so good.
And he played a perfect Nikolai Tesla.
So good.
And Bowie actually turned it down. And Nolan flew out to him and pitched him the movie in person and told him that he's the only person who could actually pull this off because he's so larger than life. And then Bowie accepted the role.
He's so good as
He's great.
And like that's really what Nikola Tesla was like. He's like this handsome Eastern European man who's
very strange,
incredibly intelligent. And in the book, you know, it's like he lived in the bottom of this mountain in the middle of America in Colorado, and I think Colorado Springs.
Yeah,
I think it's where his place is. And it's just so cool.
And having a historical figure in a movie like this really adds to the authenticity and the realism that you're like, you know, this is a fictional story, but it kind of brings a little realism to it. Like, oh, these events, maybe they did happen.
Yeah. And the thing with magicians and their tricks, no matter how elaborate or magnificent the tricks are themselves, generally they have a very simple explanation for the way it's done. And throughout the movie, you're wondering how these people are pulling these tricks off. And again, Nolan tricks you with this movie.
Yeah.
And basically, they're both competing over who does the best version of the same trick.
Yeah, the disappearing man.
So, yeah, Alfred Borden comes up with it first, the disappearing man act. Or is it the
teleporting man?
The teleporting man.
They both call it different things.
Yeah, it gets changed different
but
things.
Essentially, the magician disappears on stage and he winds up in a different area of the opera house. The stage.
Well, so Borden does it for first. He goes in the door, bounces the ball, and comes out another door and catches it. And so basically, they're both competing to who does the best version of it. And you're seeing their feud where they're disrupting each other's acts, and they're sabotaging each other's acts. And even Borden a few times sneaks into Borden's acts himself.
They're trying to figure out what the other's doing.
Yeah. And they're both basically on this endless fight because Alfred Borden was partly responsible for Rupert Angier's wife's death in the film from drowning.
Which caused the friction between them.
Again, another metaphor for the ending of the film.
Yeah.
And so, again, magic tricks are very simple. And in this film, when we finally find out what's going on, and in Borden, at the end of the movie, he confronts Angier, and Angier's always been trying to figure out how Alfred Borden does this trick.
Yeah.
And he even has Scarlett Johansson, his assistant, go to try to spy on Alfred Borden, who he ends up falling in love with. And she won't tell him how he does the trick because she doesn't know either.
Yeah.
So the whole movie, Alfred Borden has tricked you.
Yeah.
He's tricked the audience, and Chris Nolan uses him to trick the audience as well. Just like how the Chinese magician tricks the audience. His whole life is the act.
The act. You got to live it every second. And it's the most simplest answer you could ever think of. And what happens is Alfred is actually twins.
He has a twin.
Yeah.
So his assistant, who you never really hear talk, he's a different version of Borden.
Yeah. And so what happens is they both share the life of Alfred. And in the book, each twin, their names are Albert and Frederick, which forms Alfred, the name of the character. And then after that's revealed, obviously this movie's better on second and third viewings. And the more times you watch the movie, the more easily it is to identify which twin is in the scene. Because one twin is more volatile, a little high-strung, more passionate, and the other twin is more modest, more caring and considerate. And you can really see this. At first, it's subtle, the differences in personality, but then upon second and third viewings, you can really see. You can easily identify. Oh, it's that twin. Oh, it's this twin.
Because one's married to Rachel McAdams' character.
Rebecca Hall.
Rebecca. So because one's married to Rebecca Hall's character, and she consistently says, "Today you don't seem like you're in love with me. Or today you're in love with me. Or today you mean it."
Yeah.
And then the other twin is in love with Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah. And it's amazing because these two were so committed to their craft of magic that they sacrificed living a normal life in order to share one life in the pursuit of creating an amazing magic.
Yeah. And again, towards the end of the movie kind of takes over as Rupert Angier's movie, and he's coming back, and he goes to horrible deaths in acts of evil to achieve his goal of having the greatest magic trick of all time and besting Alfred Borden.
Yeah.
But what he never understands is the simplicity of Alfred Borden's trick. It's just a simple trick and has a simple explanation.
Yeah.
But Rupert Angier takes it to this new level where, so towards the end of the movie, or at the end of the movie.
Yeah, explain how it's done.
So Alfred Borden gets tried for the murder of Rupert Angier because Rupert Angier plays a trick on stage, and Alfred Borden tries to get backstage to see how he's doing it. And because it's an amazing disappearing trick where he ends up on the back of the auditorium.
It's impossibly effective.
Trick.
Yeah.
And he knows for a fact he doesn't have a double. And so Alfred gets caught in backstage where the trick that
So what happens is Angier disappears on stage, and then he shows up on the back of the arena, and the audience is like, "Oh my God, how did that happen?" But what really happens is a trip door opens up underneath his feet, and Angier falls into a water tank and drowns. It's locked.
So Alfred Borden doesn't know what's going on, and Cutter catches him and sees him. And he thinks that he drowned.
Alfred's
Borden.
actually trying to break the glass to free him from the water,
because when he falls into the water tank, it locks itself. On it instantly locks.
It's designed to lock itself.
And so later on, Alfred Borden goes on trial for murder, and he gets hanged.
Yeah.
And Rupert Angier ends up taking his daughter and raising his daughter. So Nolan hints that Angier has created clones of himself with the hats and the rabbits. Yeah. And not the rabbits, with the hats. Yeah. So there's
cats.
They find out that there are hats strewn all over the yard because Nikola Tesla doesn't think his his machine works yet. Yeah. And so again, the end of the movie, Alfred, even though he was just hung, finds Angier and he shoots Angier, and then Alfred Borden explains everything to him. And this is where Chris Nolan explains to his audience everything. He's shown you so many tricks. He's shown you so much misdirection, and you're confused as an audience member. And now he's revealing the trick. He's doing the Prestige, where Borden tells him that he had a twin the whole time. It was a simple solution. And then he learns that Rupert Angier, what he's been doing is he's been cloning himself and killing himself at the same time. Yeah. So every time he goes on stage, the trapdoor falls, he drowns himself, and then a new version of him reappears at the back of the studio. And so in the way that... So Nolan gives you two reveals at the end of the movie. He reveals Alfred Borden's trick, and then he reveals with the very last shot of the film what Rupert Angier has done. Yeah. With the shot of Rupert Angier drowned in the tank, and then there's a shot of an endless supply of these tanks.
Yeah, this is rows of these tanks with Angier in them.
So he saves this Prestige. He saves the reveal of the magic trick for the entire movie until the very last shot.
Yeah. And it shows the true nature, the conflicting nature of both these two characters, where Alfred would never, the twins would never do something like that, kill for the magic trick. They're committed to their craft, but they're too good and decent. They would never slip to the ruthless nature of Angier, where he's willing to kill and even kill himself in order to create this magic trick
out of selfishness. Whereas Borden and his twin share everything.
Yeah, they're selfless.
They share the stage. They switch. They take turns. Who's going to come out the other side? Yeah. Rather than Rupert Angier was led to jealousy of his double because his double was getting the standing ovations. Yeah. While he was at the bottom of the stage. Yeah.
So his own pride and his own ambition destroyed himself.
And destroyed the lives of Alfred Borden.
Yeah.
And again, with the Prestige, we're with another trademark of Chris Nolan with split selves, characters with split selves, where there are different versions of Alfred Borden with him and his twin. Rupert Angier is different versions of himself, pre and post magic trick, where he ends up basically selling his soul to become the greatest musician in the world. And you see him before and after that turmoil and what he's done. And yeah, love this movie. Yeah. Let's move on to probably the best movie Chris Nolan's ever made, critically acclaimed, has changed cinema for sure. The Dark Knight.
Exploded into theaters.
2008 instantly became the most successful superhero movie of all time.
It made as much money as Batman Begins' entire domestic run in 6 days.
Absolutely insane. This movie kind of just changed that whole like weekend box office. Like you got to get as much money as you can in the first 3 days. Yeah. And like the whole, what's their weekend going to be like? What's the first weekend going to be?
It's made $150 million.
Insane. Yeah. And I love the opening of the movie too, where just he opens it up with a Christopher Nolan take on a bank heist. Yeah. Where he effectively introduces you to what the film's going to be like, but also the main antagonist, not only by showing the Joker's, he hides the Joker's face for the whole scene.
You know it's him, and you're so curious. He builds that curiosity where you dying to see what he looks like.
Yeah, you hear his voice, and then once he reveals his voice and reveals his dialogue and what he really looks like, you also get a sense of the Joker's character through his actions throughout this whole heist, in terms of like him being a merciless killer. He's selfish. He treats all people as expendable, but he's also really smart too.
He's incredibly intelligent, and his plan worked out perfectly as he executed it. But you can see how much he enjoys killing when he first shoots that first guy in the bank, and he just kind of watches him suffer, you can see that he got a mask on, but you can tell that he's like really enjoying the moment.
Curious.
Yeah, you can see that the sociopathic nature of him right there.
And then Batman's parts opens up where he's Batman. He's established in the city.
Criminals are afraid of him.
Yeah. And again, he foils a drug plot and drug deal with
Scarecrow shows up
in it.
Yeah.
And I love this movie because Nolan really explores the paths of heroes and villains in The Dark Knight and the fine lines that heroes specifically walk in terms of how easily they can become villains themselves.
And what can break them.
Yeah.
Whereas, in Batman Begins, the main theme of that film is fear. And then for Dark Knight, the main theme is chaos.
And Joker is chaos in this movie.
Joker creates the chaos that can bend a person to become the opposite of what they want to be.
Yeah, Joker's in this film is the master manipulator, and he knows how to take
Yeah.
a hero's moral code and turn it on himself, and how easily he can become a villain, just like we see with Harvey Dent. You know, Harvey Dent is Gotham's White Knight. He's the best of everyone, but the Joker turns him into Two-Face and turns him into an evil villain.
Yeah. And he also, one of his other goals is to get Batman to break his code, to kill someone. And everything he does is just to try and coy Batman into that act. So it's this mental cat and mouse game between them where Batman has to try and find a way to stop him. But also, if he doesn't kill someone, other people are going to die every day.
And this is the movie where, Batman becomes the Dark Knight.
Yeah.
Meaning he's not a clear-cut hero anymore.
Yeah.
His morality is in question, and he takes the fall for Harvey Dent. So he's no longer a hero vigilante. He's now kind of just like a vigilante criminal.
Yeah. He's the hero that Gotham deserves.
I'll be whatever Gotham needs me to be.
And then in terms of the Joker, I think we should talk about it for a little bit. It was a brilliant concept to effectively turn the Joker into a terrorist. He's terrorizing the city. And there's this great scene where he has that recorded video of him torturing the guy. And Bruce Wayne and Alfred are watching it on TV, and it feels real because they're just watching footage on television. It makes it feel like, oh, this is a real person.
It's
who's
disturbing.
Very disturbing. But the Joker, I think it was obviously my favorite take on the Joker, and Heath Ledger and his performance is one of the reasons why the movie is so good.
Oh, it's his best performance is one of the best performances I've ever seen on screen.
Yeah,
and his casting. It's kind of similar to Robert Pattinson just getting cast as Batman, where there's a lot of criticism of it. It's like, oh, the guy from Twilight is going to be Batman. Like, people are like, what? But Robert Pattinson's a very talented actor. Yeah. It's like Heath Ledger. People forget when Heath Ledger got cast as the Joker, people were like, I don't want Heath Ledger as the Joker because he's coming off Brokeback Mountain, which is a very good movie. Yeah. But, that was like 2004 or 2006.
Yeah, people were less accepting.
A less accepting culture we were living in. And so people are like, I don't want the guy who's just in Brokeback Mountain to be the Joker.
Yeah, I don't want the gay cowboy to be Joker. That's horrible.
But people don't realize that these are just actors. Yeah. And Heath Ledger, incredible actor. Yeah. And Brokeback Mountain's a great movie. Yeah. And so as soon as people saw the images of the Joker, and you got like the teaser of
you heard
like,
his voice,
and like I think they released just a teaser of just his audio,
his voice,
and his laugh and how creepy he was. And then you got the first trailer, and people were like, "Oh my god, I love Heath Ledger as the Joker. It's gonna be amazing." And now it's everyone's favorite rendition of the Joker, or like one of their favorite performances ever.
Yeah, and Heath Ledger, he crafted such an incredible character. He actually lived alone in a hotel room for 6 weeks, and he kept a diary as the Joker in preparation for this role. And also, I think there was a false reporting by the media after his death, where the media took this ridiculous story saying that acting as the Joker caused him to form mental instability and caused him to die.
A lot of people believe that.
And so many people believed it, but like people don't understand. There are so many accounts of people on set, and Christian Bale even said Heath Ledger had so much fun every single day, and he enjoyed it immensely.
Yeah, Heath Ledger's death was a tragedy. Yeah. It had nothing to do with him being Joker.
Yeah.
Yes, he went into immense depth on the character.
Yeah.
And he probably had to, have some disturbing moments with himself to play that character.
Yeah.
But he was done filming.
Yeah.
He was working on another movie.
Oh, yeah.
He died months and months after he wrapped on the film.
Yeah.
So he was past the Joker. Yeah. Joker was not even on his mind anymore.
100%.
Besides he had finished. And so Heath Ledger, his death was a tragedy where he has multiple doctors, and he was taking multiple prescription medications, And obviously, when you have multiple doctors and they're not communicating with each other what you're taking, he had an accidental mix overdose of medications.
Yeah.
So that's how Heath Ledger died. He didn't go crazy from playing the Joker.
Yeah.
Again, Heath Ledger was already working on other projects, and he was filming another movie. So it was nothing to do with him playing Joker.
100%. Common misconception, and hopefully over time, a lot of people who believe that still eventually maybe change their minds. But we'll see.
That goddamn mainstream media.
Jesus.
They just need a story.
But he was so terrifying in this role, and he was actually in the first scene he acted in with Michael Caine is when he disrupts the party at the penthouse. And in order to film the scene, they didn't allow Michael Caine to see him in makeup beforehand. They wanted a real reaction from Michael Caine of seeing him, because what happens is when Joker enters the dinner party, Alfred's right there. He's the first person he sees. And what happens is when the scene plays out, Michael Caine goes up to the elevator door and it opens. And he was so terrified by Heath Ledger that he completely forgot his lines. And he froze.
I would too,
And
man.
Michael Caine is a professional actor of 60 years.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I don't blame him, because the image of Joker in this movie is terrifying.
Yeah, it's great.
The wardrobe, we talked about in the other podcast, but in terms of like having the look and aesthetic of realistic Joker, what would it really look like, this war paint? Like, what would it look like if someone was really putting face paint on themselves
Have it on
to
their
go
hands,
to battle
it gets
and
dirty.
commit crimes? Yeah, it's grimy.
By the time he's in the prison, he's just it's fading and he's sweating. And that he has this tick where he's constantly licking his lips. Heath Ledger actually started doing it in between takes because the prosthetics were starting to fall off the glue. So he would like lick his lips to keep the glue moist. And then he decided, oh, that's actually a cool character trait. So he put it into the performance of the movie. So that's why he's always licking his lips like that.
Yeah, and the Joker ends up becoming a contradiction of himself, because he's so hell-bent on not destroying society, but showing society what it's really like and what it has done to the city, and what Gotham is like and what people are like, and how people are inherently bad, and how people in Gotham are inherently evil and selfish, when really at the final climax, when he has the people in the two ships and he has the competition where one of them has to blow the other ship up, and no one decides to do it, and the people decide to not blow each other up, either one up, and end up taking the fate of each other blowing up. Yeah, and so he miscalculates what the good in people.
It's the first time a plan of his fails.
So he completely contradicts his entire actions,
because he doesn't understand people.
He doesn't understand empathy. He doesn't understand love, and he doesn't understand humanity.
And then in terms of Batman, you really get to see the struggle within him of trying to be this symbol of good and justice that he set out to become. But he also learns when he comes up against a villain like this, he has to. His moral code comes into question, because in order to stop someone like this, he has to become a bit like them, and he has to do unsavory things in order to beat them. So it has this internal struggle with who he should be as Batman and how he should carry out his vigilantism.
Yeah, because Joker has already turned Harvey Dent into a villain, and he's scared of himself becoming a villain from the Joker's manipulation. And dude, like the best part of this movie, the first time I saw it, the action sequence from when Harvey's in police custody.
Oh, yeah.
And Batman has to save him from Joker.
Yeah.
Holy freaking shit,
It's
man.
incredible.
Like, what they did in the filming of that scene is absolutely mind-blowing, because it's pretty much all practical effects.
Yeah.
From everything going down into the under tunnel and blowing up those trucks and blowing up the police cars and driving the tumbler underneath an 18-wheeler.
That's actually a miniature set.
Yeah.
So it was a miniature tumbler crash into a miniature dump truck, and they were each like this big.
Huge.
Yeah. And it was just like, it looks in person in the film, it looks like it's large scale.
Yeah.
And the great moment where Batman's driving the tumbler and then the 18-wheeler pulls up and it says slaughter is the best medicine, and the door opens and Joker's got a shotgun and he's just like in a rocket launcher, and it's like, this is amazing. And what really seals the deal for that action sequence is there's no music.
Yeah.
All you hear are the physical moments of the scene itself. There's no Zimmer score at all. And just hearing the sound effects of the action scene really brings you into the moment and makes you feel like you're there, especially because we saw it in IMAX.
Yeah. And then anyway, they flipped the 18-wheeler, which was actually an 18-wheeler they flipped. Yeah. Which is very cool. Not the way they do it in the movie. They do it with explosives. Yeah. But to actually capture that on camera was stunning.
It was unbelievable when the truck just lifts completely up, and then it's just silent for like a couple of seconds, and then it just smashes onto the pavement. Yeah. It was like, oh my God, you never seen anything like it before. Yeah. And you know it's real.
And speaking of Hans Zimmer, we didn't even bring up in Batman Begins. Amazing scores. Batman Begins is one of my favorite scores to listen to. Yeah. It's phenomenal. And the cool thing about that is all the tracks are named different variations of bats. Genos of bats. And then Dark Knight, completely iconic score, and like Hans Zimmer did this great thing with like he's like trying to figure out the themes of the Joker, and he's clapping pencils against each other.
Yeah, since Joker kills the guy with a pencil, he used pencils for a percussion instrument.
So there's just so much great music in this film.
Yeah.
And again, also the time not to use music. And again, Chris Nolan's known for using heavy amounts of orchestra scores in his films.
Yeah.
But I love it. I think it helps pace the movie and helps keep you intrigued
and
for
him,
2.5 hours.
Yeah, and just like the first one, he and James Newton Howard each made the score together, whereas James Newton Howard did all the Bruce Wayne themes. So whenever Bruce Wayne is on screen, the music that's being played is generally made by James Newton Howard, and then when Batman's on screen, it's Hans Zimmer, and it shows the contrasting nature of Bruce Wayne and Batman, which works perfectly.
There's a confusing part of The Dark Knight I think I hear about a lot in comments and stuff where Jim Gordon and Batman have to go save Rachel and Harvey, and Joker tells Batman the address that he says is Rachel.
Yeah.
And Batman's like, I'm going to save Rachel. But people are always like, why didn't he go save Rachel? Why did he go to Harvey Dent? It's because the Joker is only hell-bent on chaos and destruction, that he purposely gives them the wrong addresses so that he knows Batman will make it in time, but he purposely has Batman save Harvey Dent because he's trying to break Batman down, trying to turn Batman into a villain by killing Rachel, because he knows the cops won't get to Rachel in time.
Yeah, I didn't find that confusing, but I can see other people can because they're not listening.
Yeah, other people don't get it. But they don't get the character of the Joker. He does it on purpose.
Yeah. And speaking of that, I think there's so many iconic scenes in this movie. And I think one of the most iconic scenes and images is Joker and Batman in the interrogation room together. There's this scene, you've never seen it happen before, where these two iconic characters are just sitting at a table and then they're just having a conversation. It was so fascinating to see these two opposite sides of the spectrum conflicting with each other.
But also how similar they are.
They're the opposite sides of the same coin in a lot of ways. And then to see him try to physically brutalize Joker, and then we see that nothing can physically hurt the Joker. He can take as much pain as he wants. There's nothing Batman can do to make the Joker give in to him.
And then it's in comparison to Joker and Harvey Dent in the hospital room, where he finally breaks Harvey by giving him a gun with a bullet inside of it and telling him, and Joker's willing to just die on the spot for his ambition and his goals. And his will to break Harvey Dent and turn Harvey into a villain, which he succeeds, which gains Harvey's trust by letting him try to kill him almost. Yeah. And man, it's good.
But before that, it was probably one of the funniest part in the movie is when Joker walks into the hospital room with a woman's wig on, and he takes off his mask and he's like, "Hi." But then after that, obviously another iconic part of the film is the hospital explosion, where it's really done in one take. They set up a few cameras around the area, and even a camera in the bus. And then you just see Heath Ledger walk out. He's pressing the button and it's not working. He's like, what the hell's going on? And they actually practiced this take, I think, like almost 20 times because he wanted to make sure it would be perfect and he would do it right when they would blow up the hospital. And he nailed it. And it's so funny. And then you have this comedic performance, and then all of a sudden you watch this incredible explosion of a real building really being blown to bits.
Debris really flying at him. But it's fake debris, but it's debris flying at him.
Yeah, they put like machines inside of the building to shoot out styrofoam, but it looks real. And then there's that, if anyone's ever seen it, there's the alternate take of the camera inside the bus during the explosion, and inside, you can find it on YouTube. The Joker goes into the bus and he's just like sitting in a seat, like bouncing around with joy as the hospital explodes in the windows behind him.
He doesn't even look back.
He doesn't even look at it.
He doesn't even look at what he's done, this massive explosion. Yeah. He doesn't even care.
Yeah. And there are things that like he doesn't care about that so many other villains would care about, like when he burns that giant pile of money. And the other criminals are like, "What are you doing? You're crazy." And he's like, he pretty much doesn't care about money. He just takes what he needs for his purposes, and then that's not what he's interested in. He doesn't care.
Just want to watch the world burn.
Yeah, that Alfred line is a perfect description for who the Joker is.
Yeah. And again, Dark Knight here, again, to go back with Batman Begins in terms of how Batman becomes Batman.
Yeah.
Now Batman's established. Now, what's his life like as Batman? Like, what's the new foundations underneath the mansion look like?
Yeah.
What's his new lair look like? That new little area has, like, underneath downtown Gotham with, like, all the lights and everything where he has more of his tools and suits and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's really cool to see.
Because the Batcave's under construction.
Yeah. So, like, he's like almost a finished version of Batman.
Yeah.
And his technology, and Fox is in on it. Fox knows he's Batman, but they always completely hint at it.
Yeah.
But now you're seeing this formed version of Batman post Batman Begins.
Yeah. The next big piece of technology that I love in this movie is the Batpod. It was such a fun vehicle, and they built it so practically into the story where it is built into the actual tumbler and breaks away from it when the tumbler is damaged. And so it's believable that he has this thing, and the tires are actually the tumbler tires. And the sound effects they created with it, I think they used a Lamborghini engine to create the effects for it. But it's an incredible motorcycle, and it's so fun to watch in the chase scene.
And so this movie ends with Batman becoming Dark Knight and taking responsibility for Harvey's murder.
Yeah.
And his murders and what he's done. And it leads up to The Dark Knight Rises, which we'll get in a little bit, where Batman is now a criminal on the run.
Yeah. What really sets it apart is there's a lot of iconic imagery, like the hospital exploding, like Batman at the end, the last shot is him driving on the Batpod up the tunnel, and then he goes into the light. I think probably my favorite shot of the entire film, and maybe my favorite Nolan shot in all of his films, is when after Joker escapes and he's hanging outside of that police cruiser, and he's just whipping his hair around, whipping his hair around in the wind, and then there's police cars chasing behind him, and it's an amazing image. I think it's probably Nolan's best image. And then also one of my other favorite shots is when Batman catches Joker at the end of the film and he's hanging from the wire. Nolan takes the camera and completely tilts it upside down, and by turning the camera upside down, now the Joker is right side up on screen facing Batman. And it's just a brilliant camera technique they used in it. So there's a lot of great filmmaking, a lot of great cinematography, and iconic imagery in this movie that really puts it on another level and is a testament to why it will stand the test of time.
And again, just like Batman Begins, it's a lot of fun. Funny moments, great characters, great lines, tons of one-liners and like little interactions between Batman, Lucius, Fox, and Alfred. And it's a great time. And we got Maggie Gyllenhaal was recast as
she did a great job.
Yeah, for what's her name?
Rachel.
It's a damn shame that Matt Damon could not accept the role of Harvey Dent for this film because of conflicting schedules.
He was originally offered it,
But I mean, we could talk about this movie for hours.
Yeah.
So let's move on, and maybe we'll devote an entire episode to it someday.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But let's move on to the next movie in Christopher Nolan's filmography, which is Inception in 2010. Again, how does he have time to fit these in? He fit in Inception
because
between
he doesn't have a phone.
Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises. And so when Inception came out, and I saw it, I had to say it's probably the most ambitious film I'd ever seen in my life. And Nolan created a giant, mega-budget, live-action film of something we've never seen before on screen, practically. And this movie came out 10 years ago, and it still leaves people wondering.
People are still talking about the ending. But it's such a unique take on the espionage thriller. It's international, so the scope is huge. The cast is amazing. The action is gigantic, but realistic because of its practicality. The score is amazing. And this became an iconic movie of that year.
And so Nolan takes this complex story of entering a person's dreams and planting an idea in their mind, and he turned it into a heist movie. It's like Ocean's 12 in your mind. It's insane. It's so cool.
It's great.
And this film, obviously, it's about dreams, and dreams are overall a complete mystery to humans.
Yeah.
We don't know what they mean, what they are really. And I love the idea of exploring dreams because they can be perceived as like the true inner workings of our mind and our emotions. And that's what this movie is heavily about, is emotion.
Yeah. You really connect to the character of Cobb in a profound way. And what actually happened was DiCaprio actually worked on the script with Nolan to really flesh out the character. and to make him more emotionally personal and have a better character arc for the audience to connect with him. Because you do care for him, you care for his family, you want him to get back to his family, which is the driving force of the story. And when he does finally succeed, you're happy for him.
And when you look back on it, this movie really is just about different realities.
Yeah.
And spectacle versus questions of reality, and how pretty much everything is just subjective to us, to each other. And the ending of this movie, if you want to just jump right to it,
everyone knows it.
So we all know the ending of the movie where it cuts while his diadem is still spinning, and the diadem is the object which tells whether or not the person's in a dream or not. And it doesn't matter whether Cobb woke up or wasn't. What happens is Cobb is finally happy, and he accepts whatever reality he's in.
He's no longer obsessing over his dreams.
That's why he walks away from the diadem and doesn't wait for it to fall, because he sees his children's faces, which he hasn't seen in a reality before. And so he's accepted whatever he's in. If he's awake or he's not, if he's still asleep, he's accepted that reality, which means, and possibly means, that all realities are valid. All these dream realities are valid. And Inception was, of course, influenced by other movies like James Bond's The Matrix, and this Japanese anime film called Paprika.
Existence, Cronenberg's movie.
And a lot of people compare Paprika and Inception specifically. They say that Inception kind of ripped it off. Yes, there's a lot of similar shots, like specifically the shot where Ellen Page's character has that glass wall and it smashes. That basically is a shot for shot from Paprika. But whereas Paprika is a surrealist film, Inception is a film that's just inspired by surrealism.
Yeah. And the idea and concepts for this movie are so big and large and hard to believe, where he really grounds it by using a lot of handheld camera work and by using, like we've said in all his other movies, practical effects and practical set pieces. For example, let's talk about the hallway fight, which I think is probably the best action sequence ever made. And it's so good that it looks fake, but in order to achieve the effect, they actually built a completely rotating set of the hallway, which they were able to rotate 360 degrees. This caused the actors this gave the actors the ability to walk on the ceiling and the walls and to fall down the shaft. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and because this is all happening because, again, Chris Nolan and his obsession with different storylines and time arcs, where at the same time that this is happening in the real world where everyone's awake, there's something else happening. So that's when
there's a reason why the gravity shifts are happening.
The van's tumbling over and spinning, so that's why the hallway's tumbling and spinning. And Joseph Gordon-Levitt is just like, what the fuck's going on? Fighting on walls and ceilings, which is so cool to see. And then when the van reverses off the bridge to get the kick to wake everybody up, and then there's this awesome sequence where Joseph Gordon-Levitt has to figure out how to make everyone fall without gravity. He's got no gravity. And he has that great line. He's like, how do I make you fall without gravity? Or I hate to see out of control. But it's just so cool to watch. Just Joseph Gordon-Levitt's just floating around hallways. He's not in space. He's not in outer space. He's not on a spaceship with 0G. He's just floating around a normal set with no gravity, which you've never really seen before.
Yeah, you've never seen him.
I don't think I've ever seen that in a movie before. Yeah. And it's just so cool to watch how he figures it out.
They actually put Ellen Page's hair in a bun because they didn't know how to depict her hair in 0G. Practically.
That's smart because that's one thing that Gravity, Alfonso Cuarón's movie, which they obviously didn't because it'd be ridiculous. But when you're in space, your hair is just floating everywhere. But I love that scene because, again, practical effects. They're hanging Joseph Gordon-Levitt from wires for 2.5 weeks to film just this one scene of it all going on.
And a lot of it's done. They fix the camera to the floor. It's static, but the actors are just going all over the place. So the hallway, we don't see it moving, but we see the actors just going all over. And it's an amazing effect. And it looks so good it looks fake. But they really did it in person. And another thing that kind of blows my mind that they did in real life is in the third act when they're at the that tundra environment. They actually set off a real avalanche for the shot when the avalanche takes over the environment.
I believe that.
They set up explosives and caused a real avalanche to happen. And DiCaprio said, oh yeah, so we're just filming this scene, and then I guess it's just another day in a Nolan movie where we set off an avalanche.
And just like Memento, Chris Nolan opens up Inception with the ending of the movie.
Yeah.
The end of the movie is the opening of the movie.
Yeah.
Where Cobb wakes up on a beach offshore. We don't realize where he is yet.
He doesn't even realize where he is yet.
Yeah, we don't realize that he's actually in a dream and he's actually going to save.
He's in limbo.
Yeah, he's in the limbo where Ken Watanabe's character has been stuck.
Yeah.
And Ken Watanabe doesn't even recognize him until they start talking.
Because he's been stuck in limbo for like 50 years.
At least, because he's an old man waiting
filled
to
with
die
regret.
alone. And he finds the talisman. So Nolan, again, just confuses you the whole movie. And you got to pay attention when you watch his films, specifically Inception and Memento, where, again, the ending of the movie is at the beginning.
Yeah.
And it's just so fascinating that he just takes these storylines, and they're all over the place, because it opens up at the end of the movie, then it cuts to the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
And then where he's inside another dream at a different time.
Yeah.
A different version of Ken Watanabe's character's
Exactly,
dreams.
yeah. So it's just definitely, obviously, it's confusing your first time watching it, but the more freedom you give yourself in watching it, it's great on second and third and fourth viewings.
But the concept is fascinating.
Yeah, and this movie won the Oscar for cinematography, deservedly so. And his use of depicting slow motion was fantastic in this movie, because it's a vital part of telling the story, is being able to depict slow motion. Because what's happening, because it shows the time difference between when you're in one dream down, when you're in second dream, the first dream is in slow motion for you in real time. So they have to be able to depict that visually for the audience, and they did a great job of showing that to keep us up to speed with what was going on in the story. Yeah. You know what I mean?
There's so many visually stunning scenes in this movie, like when Cobb's teaching Ellen Page's character about how to build dreams and dream worlds, and like they're sitting at that outdoor cafe and everything like slows down, and then people start noticing them and stuff like that. But then all the things around them, the props and everything, start blowing up around them, and then everything just...
Most of that was real effects. Yeah. That was in camera.
So many cool things they did with the filming.
Yeah. And then there's that scene right after that where she's able to manipulate the architecture of the city and flip it over. And I remember seeing that in the trailer and just being blown away by that.
And yes, we've seen it in Doctor Strange comic books, everybody. I know.
Chris Nolan is a big fan of James Bond. And so you could really see the large scope international feel of an espionage feel of this movie. And also in terms of the third act, where he sets it in that Arctic tundra. And all the bad guys are. It seems like they're like bad guys in a Bond movie.
It's like a James Bond action sequence.
Exactly. And he actually based it off of his favorite James Bond movie, Her Majesty's Secret Service. There's a similar climactic environment as that scene. Yeah. So it shows that his love for James Bond, and maybe he'll make a James Bond movie soon. And also that giant set, that tower that blows up at the climax of the movie, that was actually a miniature that they built in a parking lot. And then... it's probably maybe 100 feet tall, and so they really blew that up in a parking lot and digitally put it into the movie, and it looks real because it is real.
Yeah, so this is overall incredible script, incredible movie, really deep ideas about reality and subjective realities and perception of your reality. It's a really challenging film. It still leaves people, like we said, wondering what it's about and wondering what the ending is. And again, ambiguous ending. It's open-ended. For me, I like to think that Cobb, woke up. Yeah. And this is not a dream. But again, like I said earlier, it doesn't matter if he woke up or not. He's accepted his reality. Yeah. He's accepted where he is at this time and in this reality, and so he's going to live it. Yeah.
There's also this fun theory where this movie is a movie about filmmaking, where each character plays a different role on a film set, where Cobb is the director and Eames is the actor. And Ariadne is the production designer.
Oh, yeah.
They all have like a different role that could relate to a film set.
Who's JGL, like the stunt coordinator?
I would say props. Props department, maybe special effects.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
And then executive producer is Michael Caine's character.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Ken Watanabe is the production company.
He's the funder. He's the studio. Again, just an amazing movie. We've all seen it. Again, we could talk about it forever, but let's move on. To The Dark Knight Rises 2012,
which I love.
I know a lot of people aren't too high on this movie, and like of the trilogy.
And I understand people's qualms with it. There are questionable parts to the movie, but I just think this movie is a great conclusion to the trilogy. And I was extremely satisfied when it was over.
Yeah, I mean, I thought, if I had to rank the 3 Batman movies of Chris Nolan's universe, which is the best and the worst. This is number 3 for
Yeah,
me.
I
But
would
that's
agree.
not saying it's a bad movie.
Yeah,
I
not
love
by
this
a long
movie.
shot.
I remember when the trailer came out for this movie and we watched it like 10 times in a row, and it was just blew me away. Like Bane with like blowing up the Steelers stadium.
Yeah.
And just like it looks so good.
Amazing.
And Tom Hardy's Bane is absolutely terrifying, and
Yeah.
he did a phenomenal job bringing this character that we knew about.
Yeah.
Had seen pretty weird renditions of him on film,
And on cartoons.
and then
yeah.
brought him into a realistic world, and he became an iconic performance like Heath Ledger's Joker. If not in like excellence of acting, he did a great job.
Big
but like
big shoes to fill, but he did a great job.
in terms of like notoriety of the role, it's
Yeah.
very popular and people love it.
His voice is great. His physicality is great. Tom Hardy, I think, is 5 inches shorter than Christian Bale, but they made him look huge.
Yeah.
And also, I absolutely love the design of the mask. I think one of the reasons why it works so well was that mask is just frightening looking and interesting looking, and it has a practical effect for him to keep the medicine entering his nose and mouth so he can breathe it in. But it was just an iconic image, that mask of Bane, because in the old cartoon shows and the movie, it was just like a Mexican wrestler mask.
But like also like with tubes and stuff.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
like it was cool. He never involved with, you see him injecting anything, no tubes or nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
He's just like, oh, it's wearing the mask.
And it was like he had such a great introduction with that plane sequence, and when his mask is when the head cover is finally pulled off and you see Bane for the first time, and oh my, it was terrifying.
You look like a big guy for you.
And I know they overdubbed his voice after the initial reactions to the trailers in the opening scene, but I actually prefer it with Tom Hardy's actual on-set dialogue.
Yeah, I loved it. I remember we saw the trailer and
Yeah,
IMAX,
and you
we were like,
yeah,
this is amazing.
it's
Like, yeah, it's
fantastic.
kind of hard to hear, but like it's part of the character.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah.
I'm bummed that they had to re-record the audio for it.
Yeah, I think it would have worked just as well. But I think he was a great villain, and it was great to see Batman. We talked about the fight in a previous podcast, but just to see him get physically dominated by another character we've never seen before on screen.
Yeah. And we're introduced to Catwoman by Anne Hathaway, who did an awesome job bringing an iconic character to screen.
So good as Catwoman.
She's her own take. Michelle Pfeiffer did a great job, but this is like a new version of Catwoman, which we loved. And I mean, Halle Berry did a great job too. Mm-hmm. But I loved Anne Hathaway as Catwoman. I thought she did a great job.
Yeah.
And she's very charismatic and
very
and
sultry
perfect for the role.
Yeah. She can handle herself. I thought it was a great rendition of the
Yeah,
character.
there's a lot of fun back and forth between Batman and her.
Especially the first scene when she steals the pearls.
Yeah.
And he's like, what the hell? And then she jumps out the window.
Yeah. If I had qualms with this movie, it's really kind of just that like Batman gave up on everything when his nuclear plan didn't work, and he kind of is just hiding. I mean, I know it's an effective way to tell the story and bring the character back, but I just wasn't a huge fan of it. Not that I don't hate it, not that I hate it or anything. It's just like if I had to change one thing, I would have done it a little differently rather than Bruce Wayne hiding out from everybody in his mansion.
I understand your opinion, but I loved it. And they turned him into this Howard Hughes type figure. A recluse.
Nolan ended up getting to make
his
Howard Hughes
Aviator
film.
movie. But I really liked that part of the character. I thought it was very unexpected. And it showed the physical and emotional toll that being Batman has had on him. Mm-hmm. And he only becomes Batman again because he has to. You know what I mean?
Because as you learn in this movie, and again, spoiler alerts. So Batman, and Nolan hints at this in Dark Knight. Batman's not supposed to be a permanent solution to Gotham's problems.
Yeah.
He's a temporary solution, a temporary fix, which he hopes to pass the mantle on somehow.
Yeah.
So Batman's just a symbol for the good and a beacon of hope
He
for
hints
Gotham
at it.
City.
He says it in Batman Begins.
Yeah, in Dark Knight they reiterate it where he's at dinner with Harvey Dent.
Yeah.
And so Batman obviously sacrifices himself in this movie. So Batman dies, but Bruce Wayne doesn't die.
Yeah.
Bruce Wayne survives.
Yeah.
But he kills Batman symbolically to act as a beacon of hope and again a symbol for Gotham City.
Yeah.
So again, Batman was never meant to be a permanent solution.
Yeah.
And to put Batman, break his back, and to put him in the same prison that Talia and Bane were trapped in, really proves how great of a person and symbol that Bruce Wayne is to Gotham and to the world, where he is able to escape from this bottomless pit in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite set pieces in the trilogy. They really built that giant set, and it looks incredible. And those scenes in the prison where he's trying to get back to strength. Then the inmates chant that Deshi Deshi Basara Basara. and him trying to climb up the wall. Great sequence. And it was a metaphor for him. He lost what made him Batman, which is why he failed when he fought Bane. And so in the prison, he gains that will back, and that's why he's able to escape, and that's why he's able to take down Bane at the end. So his character arc is great in this movie. It's probably the biggest character arc since the Batman Begins, and it's a great ending to the character.
Marion Cotillard as Talia al Ghul.
Yeah.
So good in this movie. She's an awesome villain because every time I see her pop up in a Nolan movie, I'm like, she's gonna be a bad guy.
She's a bad guy.
Because, you know, she's Maul in Inception, and she's really a bad guy in that film, even though her character isn't really an evil person.
He used Talia as a way to connect it to the first film, Batman Begins, with the League of Shadows. So it all tied together to Ra's al Ghul's original plan in the first Batman.
And then we got a familiar face here. We got Joseph Gordon-Levitt comes into the universe, and he plays a cop. And
James Blake.
Yeah, James Blake, the cop James Blake from the comics. And he eventually figures out who Batman is.
Yeah.
Low-key, I guess.
Because he's an orphan, too.
The only person in Gotham who figured it out. Yeah, because they're orphans. Like, man, I'm an orphan.
I saw the look in your eyes.
I saw that look.
I'll say that's a questionable part of the movie.
Yeah, so that's kind of but it's essential, and then it's kind of like a partner for Batman. Sort of, he kind of plays like sort of like a Robin-esque role in this film. Yeah. James Blake, and he helps Batman out, and eventually
the ending of the movie, which is a great shot where he ends up in the Batcave and entering it, and then he gets the platform rises,
and then Hans Zimmer scores.
Goosebumps. It was great.
Yeah, I love how everyone's like, "Oh my God, Joseph Gordon-Levitt's the new Batman. They're gonna do Nightwing or whatever." It's like, dude, he just ended the movie.
Yeah, he's not making another one.
There doesn't have to be a sequel to every goddamn movie out there. It's
exactly.
okay to just end it.
Where's the post-credits scene?
I love how he ends it like that. Again, ambiguous ending. You get to create it.
Yeah.
Did he become Batman? Did he just go home and like jerk off? Like, I don't want this responsibility, Bruce. Can I just have the Lamborghini? That's fine with me. But is he gonna be Nightwing? Oh, it's fine. It's over. It's over. It's done. Chris Nolan wiped his hands of Batman.
Yeah.
And he did a phenomenal job with the trilogy. It's one of the best trilogies of all time.
Absolutely.
It's up there.
And then I just want to touch on Michael Caine really steals every scene he's in this movie. And it gets to that emotional scene where he abandons Bruce Wayne because he doesn't want him to continue his quest for Batman because he knows it's going to lead to his death. And then he leaves Bruce Wayne. And then watching Alfred cry at the cemetery, looking at his tombstone, I was weeping.
Oh, I cried during this movie, for sure.
And then a lot of people have problems with it, and a lot of people think it's a dream, which I think is stupid. You're thinking too much about Inception. But when Alfred goes to Italy to that cafe and he sees Bruce Wayne and Selena Kyle, and they just give each other that nod, I loved it. It was great.
Yeah, Bruce Wayne survived.
Yeah.
Bruce Wayne saved Gotham City by creating Batman, then killing Batman.
Yeah. But I love Rises. I think it's a fantastic movie and a great ending to the trilogy.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Tom Hardy's the man.
Yeah.
Again, Chris Nolan just loves to cover his face, though. All right, that concludes the Batman trilogy. Now it's time to move on to Interstellar.
Love it.
Which we got the script for right here.
Look at that.
It's pretty cool. Shooting script, and it also has the
behind-the-scenes photos and stuff.
Behind-the-scenes photos and storyboarding. Very cool. Anyways, this is a phenomenal space journey film. Maybe Nolan's least Nolan movie. So, like, there's not really nonlinear storytelling. We're basically following just one character the whole time.
It's not an ensemble.
Cooper's in every scene. McConaughey's in every scene. Maybe like a few scenes.
Chastain has her own thing.
Yeah, but mostly it's just following Cooper the whole time. Yeah, which is you don't really see. You usually see other perspectives in Nolan movies. It's in space. Yeah, which is awesome. And space is the shit. And so McConaughey plays a former NASA pilot who has to go on a save the world mission to colonize another planet.
And we learned that the Earth is running out of food, and this mission is a chance for them to find a new place for humans to live.
And it's not revenge based, which is kind of rare.
He does not have a wife though.
Yeah,
she's gone.
Yeah. It's an emotional story though. It really is.
This movie I think is his most personal movie because of the connection between Cooper and his daughter. That really pulls you into the movie. It's the heart of the movie. And it's what emotionally connects you to Cooper.
Yeah, it's about love. And I think Anne Hathaway's character says in the movie that what transcends time and space in different dimensions is love. Yeah, according to the movie. Yeah, and this is a very scientific film, and specifically physicist Kip Thorne aided in the science and theories behind the script and the story. And this movie actually led to multiple scientific papers being written about it and its ending.
He actually created the mathematics to depict authentic, realistic visual representation of a black hole. Yeah, and it was accurate because when we got the image of the black hole earlier this year, it looked just like the black hole in Inception.
Pretty smart guy. Yeah. And I really love this movie. And again, a theme that Nolan plays around with again in this film is time, and specifically
when they go to that planet.
So they go to that planet, and you deal with relativity, and it's like every minute,
every hour is a year
or something like that
in Earth.
Or like every minute's like a year on Earth.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And the cool thing that Nolan does in that scene is he has the constant ticking of an actual watch that he recorded, playing the whole time throughout that scene.
It's used a lot in the score, and it's actually Hans Zimmer recorded Christopher Nolan's actual pocket watch for that effect.
And it's a really effective way to tell the audience that time's running out, or like you gotta hurry the hell up.
Exactly.
Get out of there. And this movie practically is an amazing achievement because Nolan's achieving as much as he can in camera. Yeah. And so the ship, when they're mounting cameras on the ship and displaying like these high resolution images on like of a screen.
Yeah, so for the actors when they're in the cockpit, they're not seeing just the shooting crew in the background through the windows. They projected images of space to help aid the actors in understanding what the environment they were supposed to be in was.
It's kind of similar to what they did with First Man. They kind of did the same thing. Mounting cameras on an actual ship. Yeah. Kind of, I wouldn't say they copied it, but it's just a really effective method to make it seem realistic.
And they actually built the actual spaceships, especially for when they landed on that water planet. They actually built that and used a crane to drop it into the water. They actually built TARS, the robot.
Yeah, those are real.
And it was puppeteered by an actor the entire time.
Sometimes CGI, but mostly practical.
Most of the time it's practical.
And the robots are also based off modern art. They don't look like anything other robot you've ever seen.
Yeah, very unique, new take on robots.
They also built that giant wave that killed everybody. Just kidding. Just kidding.
But I think my favorite set piece in the movie is the Tesseract at the end.
Oh, absolutely.
They actually built that, and they put McConaughey on wires for the filming of it. And when you see the scene play out on screen, it's like that has to be CGI. There's no way that's real. But in fact, it is a giant set that they built, and it's brilliant. It looks amazing.
Yeah. And Cooper, he's such an interesting character. He's like this cowboy fighter jet pilot or NASA pilot, and he has to go on this mission to save the world. And he's abandoning his family and abandoning his daughter. And it's one of the most emotional scenes in the movie is when he's leaving, and she's telling him to stay.
Yeah, he's holding her in the bedroom.
Yeah, and she doesn't want him to go. And then he says that line like, hey, we might even be the same age when I get back here. Yeah. And she's like, you don't know when you're coming back because he doesn't know when he's coming back. Yeah. And for him at the moment, he wants to sort of recklessly be a pilot again and work on a mission. But also he does want to save the world for his daughter and his daughter's future. And then ironically, he gets out into space and he's on this ship. And he's surrounded by the vastness of space and emptiness of it. And it helps him. It focuses him on what really matters most to him, and it's the love of his family and the love of his daughter, which he has a constant struggle with, especially when they come back from the planet where he's lost 20 years of life on Earth, and his daughter's grown up.
Yeah, and that's what the Tesseract represents. It's his connection to his daughter through gravity across different dimensions, and that's why he's able to get those messages to her across the entire space of the universe, you know what I mean?
And through time.
And it's a great sequence when he's using the books as Morse code and she's figuring it out with the watch and everything. Great, really brilliant way to do it.
Another like really clever practical effect that he used in this film is to have the actors seem like they're in zero gravity. Mm-hmm. He didn't use wires or nothing when they're on the ship. He just had them just balance.
So he just had them pretend just like standing there.
You just have a medium wide close up shot of somebody and they're just like going like
this. You don't
have to be in a wire. It works just as well. Yeah. And I remember that I saw an interview of like Anne Hathaway where they're like, how'd you do it? He's like, oh, they just made you go like this.
She's like, I went on one leg and was just like, ugh.
It's effective.
It works. It looks real.
And I'm not going to lie. we talked about this in the other podcast where like the most shocking moment of the film was when Matt Damon,
Pops
mega
out.
superstar, comes out of the chamber.
Yeah.
And it's just a mind-blowing moment. And it's still to this day, every time I watch the movie, I still always forget that Matt Damon's in the movie until it comes up. And it's one of my favorite parts of the film, but also deals with that internal struggle of fear of death, and
survival,
not wanting to be alone,
and
survival. Where Matt Damon's willing to risk, his character's willing to risk the survival of the human race just to maybe be saved from this emptiness planet, even though he's the one that came up with the mission.
And he was like originally like the best of us, like the best astronaut, the best leader, and he, based on his fear of death, he turned into the villain
again, like Harvey Dent. He becomes a villain. And it's really. And then he attacks McConaughey and tries to kill him too.
And first of all, he tricks him about saying the planet has areas which you can grow vegetation.
And it's habitable.
Habitable, yeah. I think one of the best aspects of this movie is he shot most of this film with IMAX cameras. But the thing with IMAX cameras is they're extremely large and heavy, so they always have to be fixed onto something. But with this, they went handheld, and Hoyt van Hoytema himself personally threw the IMAX cameras on his shoulder, and he's a big guy. He's like 6'2", and he's pretty big. So he's able to handle the weight of the IMAX cameras. So it was the first time a feature film was made with handheld shots with an IMAX camera.
Must have been doing some deadlifts before filming.
Absolutely.
It's a heavy piece of equipment.
Yeah.
Nolan's so anti-CGI that the scene where Cooper and his kids are chasing down that little drone
the drone, yeah.
And they're driving through the cornfields, this huge cornfield, which they actually grew for the movie.
Yeah.
They grew this corn for the movie, and Chris Nolan's like, we're going to grow. We're not going to use CGI.
Yeah.
And then he sells the corn and made a profit.
Yeah, they made a profit.
It's like so smart and awesome, and it just makes it so much better because you really see the corn. They're really driving through the corn.
Yeah.
But one of my favorite scenes, not just in this movie, but like in film in general, is the docking scene.
Yeah.
Where Cooper has to, after Matt Damon's ruined the ship and he created that explosion and he went out of the ship when it wasn't properly pressurized and it blew up. And then Cooper has to somehow dock the ship that's spinning uncontrollably
so fast
with his spaceship.
Yeah.
And the scene's amazing because the stakes are never been higher in a movie. You know, it's just the fate of humanity rests on his shoulders to dock this ship.
Yeah.
And then Anne Hathaway's like, "What are you doing?" And then
Tars is like, you can't do it.
Tars is like, he says no time for caution, right? Or something like that. So that's the name of the music playing in the background too. But just getting up there and spinning with the organs playing Hans Zimmer's score, and then docking the ship onto that spinning other station. Yeah, it just blows my mind every time I see it. And I'm just like getting goosebumps thinking of it.
And it looks great because it's all real, tangible pieces. There's no CGI. They built miniatures for that. So it really looks fantastic and believable.
It's funny because the spacesuits, they kind of look like what SpaceX spacesuits look like.
Yeah.
Like they must have watched Elon probably watched Interstellar. Like, that's a pretty cool design. I like that.
These helmets. I like these helmets. But and it's got this great bit after he gets out of the Tesseract and he winds up and he's in the future, and he's on this new space environment where humans are living on now, and it's a cylindrical giant oval. And you can see, like, in the background, like, when he's in... It looks like it's, like, Kansas again. But, like, when you look in the distance, the Earth is tilted upwards and spans all the way up.
Oh, the ship.
Yeah. So it's like he saved humanity. And he gets to see that humanity survived because of his actions.
And they're starting to colonize different parts of the solar system.
Yeah.
And I just love... The shots of the ship traveling through the solar system are amazing because... People don't understand like how big the universe is, but they don't understand how big just our solar system is, not our galaxy, just the solar system, and how long it takes just to get anywhere. Yeah. And Nolan does a great job, like these shots where it's just like this tiny, tiny little ship, and it's just flying past like Saturn or something like that. And it just looks so cool.
Just in the Milky Way galaxy, there's 350 million stars.
Yeah, that's a lot of stars.
It's a lot of stars.
It's a lot of solar systems.
Yeah, and I think one of my favorite shots is when the ship starts streaking into the black hole, and it's that streaking light, and it's going so fast, and it's just that music builds up, and you're like, what's gonna happen? He's going into a black hole.
And then when he goes through the black hole by himself, and then also it reminds me of 2001: A Space Odyssey when the astronauts traveling through space and time as well. And like Kubrick did that great thing with like the lighting and lasers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then Chris like worked off that, but did it more practically. Like there's like the shots of the sparks from something. It looks like they just put a camera below sparks flying out, and it's just like falling down.
Yeah. But I love this movie. I think it's his most emotional movie. It was great to see him tackle the sci-fi plane. He did, I mean, Inception sci-fi, but to actually do something like tackling space, great take on it. And I love this movie. I love the score. I love everything about it.
Ambiguous ending.
What happened? Yeah.
Did he go find Anne Hathaway?
We'll see. Find her? We're gonna make it up for ourselves. I think he found her, and then they started a family.
Yeah. You gotta repopulate that planet.
Yeah, repopulate.
I mean, they got the embryos in the sperm, but there's some other way you can do it. Take that space.
We're the last people on this planet.
All right, you want to move on? Let's do it. All right, we got one more movie because, again, we're not talking about Tenet because we can't see it. Dunkirk, which is not only one of Nolan's best movies, but it's one of the best war films ever made.
Absolutely.
And it's a modern masterpiece, this movie. And
this was the first time Nolan actually got nominated for Best Director.
Which is insane.
It's crazy.
Absolutely blows my mind.
Yeah, but this got nominated for a lot of awards, and I think it won 5 Oscars.
Yeah. And so Nolan took his time manipulation and different storylines, and you took it to a new level here.
Yeah.
In a way that I've never seen before. And your first viewing, you're kind of confused what's going on.
Yeah, because it's not explained to you.
Yeah, because he's telling the story from 3 different elemental perspectives: land, air, and water.
Yeah, so what happened in Dunkirk was, so the British army is trapped at the Dunkirk beach, and the Germans are closing in on them. And the only way the British can survive is if they find a way to travel across this huge body of water and get back to England. And then, so what happened was these soldiers spend a week on the beach, and then the fighter pilots spend an hour flying to the beach, and then anyone who took a boat to rescue the soldiers spent a day traveling across the water.
Yeah, so it's called a triptych from 3 different perspectives.
Yeah.
And yes, again, it's a World War II rescue mission that actually happened of the Allied British and French forces that were trapped on the coastal beaches of Dunkirk, France, from the invading Nazi army. And something I love that Nolan does in this movie, you never really see Nazis.
No,
you don't really see them at all.
They're out of focus when you do see them finally at the end.
Yeah, so you don't really see them, which I really like. That's what I like how he did that. And this movie's also, it's really a survival film more than anything.
Survival of just, it's a representation of England's survival. You know what I mean?
And France.
Because this was a decisive turning point for the war, because if the Nazis ended up closing in on them and killed all of these soldiers, there's no way that Europe could have won over the Nazis.
Yeah, and it blows my mind that we never really learned about this at school at all. And the first time, before the movie came out, I read a book on Dunkirk. It just absolutely blew my mind. And it's such an integral part to the war. Allied forces beating the Nazi party, and I love it. But so something that people have issues with this film is very minimal dialogue. It's a very short script, and a lot of people have issues with it because there's not a lot of dialogue, there's not a lot of talking. But Chris Nolan understands that not only do you not need dialogue to tell a story, this story doesn't need dialogue because this is a story about physicality, and it's about action.
Yeah.
And he's trying to make it realistic to like what these people were like on the beach.
Yeah.
Like they're not talking to each other. They're scared for their lives.
Yeah.
And
they're
terrified.
desperately waiting for someone to rescue them.
They think they're going to die.
They didn't even know what was happening.
They're not going to just be talking about normal stuff and random things. You don't need dialogue to tell that story.
This film could work as a silent picture.
It could.
No problem. And what's actually really cool about this is Nolan shot on the actual beach where the actual Allied forces were trapped. It's completely the same exact spot.
It's incredible.
And they even built the mole, that bridge that they walk out onto. That they actually constructed that for the film. But there's so much practical set pieces in this movie. Like they actually sank a ship for that ship that sinks in. There's that amazing shot where the ship's sinking and it's tilting over, and then he fixes the camera on the side of the boat, and then there are soldiers that are trying to climb away, and then the water just starts rushing, and it's a sideways shot, and the water just like overtakes the shot. It's probably the best shot of the movie. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Plus, he did a bunch of things where like to make it seem like there's a ton of soldiers on the beaches, he just had like dummies out there.
They had
like,
cardboard cutouts.
Cutouts of human beings that like in the shot from 200 yards away, you're not going to know what it is if it's human or not.
And they were setting off real explosions on the beach near the actors. And I think the most effective practical effect in this movie is obviously strapping IMAX cameras onto those Spitfires.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
It's cool. They use this really cool like pulley dolly system with the planes, with the camera strapped to it, and Chris Nolan and some other guy were the ones that were like moving the ship around and telling it what to do, which is really cool. Yeah, and they're actually filming it like with the real ship.
Yeah, right, and it was so effective because you've seen dogfights before, but you never felt like what it was like to be in a Spitfire, and to actually like see what it's like to actually shoot another plane down realistically, and how hard it was, how crude the technology was. It was just an iron sight right there, and Tom Hardy obviously says very little in this movie, and his face is covered most of the time, but he's one of my favorite parts of the movie.
Yeah, he expresses so much with his eyes, and I thought like heading into the movie that Tom Hardy was going to be a Nazi fighter pilot. I didn't really know what he was going to be heading into the movie, but then you find out he's a good guy, and it's awesome.
And a problem that people have with the movie, which it probably would have helped if he explained it, but I guess he didn't feel it was necessary, was the reason people have problems with the fact that there aren't more Spitfires flying around to save the people on the beach. But what happened was pretty much the entire Air Force was inland, and there were intense Spitfire battles going on inland. So all the Air Force was out there, and so that's why there were only a few planes in Dunkirk, the movie, because they didn't have that many left.
Yeah, and Chris with this movie just really wanted you to feel like what it was like to be each of these type of soldiers. So like what it was really like to be one of the Marines on the ground, or like one of the actual pilots, or the men and women who were on the ships going to rescue them and everything. And it's so realistic. And the movie, like the first 10 minutes of the movie, I don't think there's any dialogue. Yeah. And he shot the whole thing on IMAX film, a 65, 70 millimeter film. And as soon as the movie starts, and it's just like these close-ups of these kids' faces who are like 20 years old, and they're soldiers,
and they're walking through the abandoned town.
You just feel like you're there. I've never seen anything like it, and like you feel like you're walking on the beach with them, and you see the hopelessness in their eyes and how they think they're gonna die.
And what works so well is that Nolan casts mostly unknown young actors, and they're really young, because what happened was back then, most of the people that made up the armed forces were kids. They were 18, 19 years old. They were inexperienced. So he purposely hired inexperienced, very young actors to really sell the point, like, these were kids who were defending our countries back then.
Yeah, when you see like a World War II movie or something, it's like Matt Damon's in Saving Private Ryan, but he's like 30 in that movie.
Yeah, there's the people are generally pretty old. It's like watching a teen movie with high schools being played by 30-year-olds.
Yeah, and plus, Chris Nolan didn't realize what he did when he cast Harry Styles in this movie, but he cast one of the most famous people on the planet. Yeah. And I don't think he understood how popular Harry Styles is in the world, and how big of a pop star he is. Yeah. But, like, I'm sure he got some ticket sales from girls wanting to go see Harry Styles on camera.
Oh, yeah. When he was cast, I was like, Harry Styles, really? But then it was also like, in Nolan we trust. Yeah. You know, he knows what he's doing.
Pulled it off. You did a great job.
Harry Styles was fantastic in this movie. He was a great part of it, and he really performed really well. And I loved him in the movie. He was great.
Yeah, he does a great job. He's like a flawed kid who's just like out for trying to save himself, and he's bitter and he's kind of angry. Yeah. But he's also, he's a good guy too at the same time.
He's just trying to survive.
Yeah, he did a good job, I think.
I think he did a great job, and he's probably going to act more in the future. Yeah. But another aspect, obviously, that works so well in this film is Hans Zimmer's score, which is extremely intense, and he uses the ticking clock again as a theme for time running up.
Isn't there a clock ticking the whole movie?
Pretty much, every sound of music that you hear, there's a talk.
There's a clock. I think there's a watch just ticking the entire movie under, like, very low.
Oh, really? I wouldn't be surprised.
I think so.
And it's Nolan's watch again. I think it's one of Zimmer's best scores. Extremely intense, but also at the end, at the climax, he's got those soft strings playing, and it really brings home, like, the victory. Technically, it wasn't a victory, but just escaping was a victory in the eyes of Europe.
Yeah, it's so interesting how they escaped too. Yeah, like just like the historical significance of it, like, and it's really terrifying. Like the multiple times where the lead characters on the beach, you think they're gonna get out and you think they're gonna get saved, but every time they're on a boat, just something goes wrong. Yeah, or it gets blown up. Yeah. Or it gets turned over, and it's just terrifying. Like the scene where they're all the kids, all the soldiers are inside that that ship.
And they're having the jelly sandwiches. Yeah.
On the beach ship inside.
Oh,
when they're
yeah.
all hiding out from the Germans, and like bullet holes started piercing the ship, and they're all so desperate to get out that they think that they can save this ship that has 100 bullet holes in it by just plugging it up with their hands.
Yeah.
Not knowing that they don't realize that, like, no matter what, there's nothing you can do. This ship is gonna sink.
Yeah, 100%. And that's a great scene because it ultimately leads to the connective tissue of the three storylines, how that connects to they become part of that scene where Tom Hardy saves that ship from another Spitfire. And then we see, these characters were those characters from before, but we didn't see their faces or inside of the ship. So Nolan cleverly eventually ties everything together in a brilliant way, which is, you're kind of confused at first, but when it does come together, you're like, oh my God, that was genius.
Yeah, it's really, a lot of people had trouble following it the first viewing, but the second viewing, you pretty much get it.
Yeah.
And then the ending is amazing, like where they save them, and it's so uplifting. Yeah. And I love the shot where Tom Hardy's character sacrifices himself to keep fighting and protecting the people and protecting the soldiers. He lets himself run out of gas, and then he ends up being captured by the Nazis, which, again, you don't see like the Nazis' faces or anything, which is great.
But it's an amazing shot where he lit his plane on fire, and he's just standing there on the beach, and it's that warm light from the flames are glowing on his face, and he's just looking out, and then eventually the Nazis come onto camera, and then they grab him. Yeah. And the music's playing, and it's an emotional scene of the heroism and the sacrifice that character gave to help those people on the beach.
Yeah, for any of you kids who don't understand why he lit his plane on fire, is so the Nazis couldn't use it or use the technology.
But I think this is easily one of Nolan's best movies. It's an absolute masterpiece of a film. One of my favorite war movies of all time, and solidified Nolan as one of the greatest directors working today, because it was his first time in a while working outside of the sci-fi superhero genres, and it's his first historically based film. So being able to make a film in this genre and make a great film really solidified his status.
Yeah, and we saw this 70mm film at IMAX, and it was just one of the greatest film experiences I've ever had in my life. And it blew me away to see it in that format in person. And if you got to see it on film, you know what I'm talking about. If not, it's still great. But it's an amazing film, and I love it. I love it a lot. I'm tired.
We're like 2 hours in. Yeah, this is a long one. But yeah, I mean, we love Nolan. He's one of the greatest directors, and I can't wait to see Tenet, and I can't wait to see the movies he continues to make.
Yeah. Again, don't spoil Tenet. We can't see it. America's in political turmoil, so we can't see anything for at least another month.
We have no idea what's going to happen.
We have no idea. We can't even freaking go to a restaurant. So who knows when they'll open up theaters. We're not going to watch it online. I will not see Tenet not in theaters, not on film.
We might even drive to a different state to watch it.
Yeah, I'll drive to New Mexico to see that. I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
I got to see Tenet. But you done? You good?
I'm great.
All right, that concludes our episode on Christopher Nolan. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. Again, if you want to support us, share our podcast, subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Share us with your movie friends. I know you got some of those. If you have friends who like movies, let them know what we're about. You're going to help us get seen by more people. Leaving those 5-star reviews, leaving the written reviews are exceptionally helpful. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, at Raiders of the Lost Podcast. Stay tuned for our next episode, which will be on top 5 or top 10 serial killer films.
Oh, yeah.
Coming out on Thursday.
It's going to be good.
And other than that, have a great start to your week, and see you soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Take care.